on Mono Red Sneak Attack against Ed Dimicco playing Grixis Delver. Who do you think has the edge here?
I think Jeff Hoogland probably has the edge. I think the Grixis Delver deck typically is going to have, it usually is good at fighting combo decks, but this mono red deck, because it's monocolor, it is a lot more resilient to a lot of the disruption. Also the fact that it just has Inferno Titan that it can potentially hard cast and basically win the game is a pretty big deal too. And it has main deck Blood Moon.
All right, well, Ed is going to start off with a Deathrite Shaman. He is on a mulligan to 5, though.
Wow.
Jeff is just going to play a Through the Breach on turn 1. Ed is going to force
Not
a will,
holding any punches.
pitching a Delver of Secrets. So Jeff had an Ancient Tomb, Simian Spirit Guide, Seething Song, Through the Breach. It did get countered by Ed. However, Ed was on a multi-5, so he doesn't really have much else going on.
He basically just 2 for 3'd his opponent, though, so that helps dig himself out of this mulligan a little bit.
It does. Ed is going to fall down to 18 using his Salting Tarn to get a Volcanic Island. We got a Young Pyromancer and an attack with a Deathrite Shaman, so a lot of cards in Ed's deck are going to be live, but the shields are down here if Jeff is able to combo a second time. He just has a Mountain and a Pass.
And a lot of times with these combo decks, they usually can't go combo on one turn, force a combo on the second turn if the first one gets countered. That's especially going to be more difficult for Jeff because he doesn't have cards like Ponder and Brainstorm in his deck to help filter his draws. So his deck is very dense, so there is a good chance that he just draws what he needs. And he doesn't have to combo off. He can just develop his mana and then play something like Godo Bandit Lord or Inferno Titan or Batterskull as cards that potentially win the game. You can also just play a Chalice of the Void. That could be very problematic, or just cast a Sneak Attack. So Jeff is still in this.
All right, well, Ed is going to play a Ponder, keep the top cards, and drop for his turn. Or draw off the Ponder, attack for 2, and to bring Jeff down to 15. Jeff does
geez.
go for a Batterskull, pitching a Simian Spirit Guide, and Ed found a Daze off of that Ponder, decided to keep it,
and
was able to counter that spell, get another Elemental, use the Deathrite Shaman on Jeff's end step, going to knock him down to 11, and he's going to be dead here in a couple of turns.
Yeah, and again, in order to cast that Batterskull, Jeff had to use 2 resources, that Simian Spirit Guide and the Batterskull, and Ed Dimicco was essentially able to 2-for-1 his opponent with that Daze, again, digging himself out of this mulligan.
All right, well, Jeff is able to just hard cast a Simian Spirit Guide, pass the turn back to Ed. He's going to eat another Seething Song out of Jeff's graveyard, going to bring him down to 5. Delver of Secrets is not going to flip, but Ed is just going to turn all of his creatures sideways. A Deathrite Shaman activation will finish it up after combat, so Jeff is just going to scoop up the cards. Ed Dimicco takes that first game on Grixis Delver over Jeff Hoogland on Mono Red Sneak Attack on a mulligan to 5.
Yeah, and we saw him have just barely what he needed in each situation. That was just, the narrowest of margins.
It's very heads up by Ed to take that Daze off of the Ponder. It was Ponder, Land, Delver of Secrets. So I think that a lot of situations somebody might take the Delver of Secrets, leave the Daze on top, and play the Delver, waiting to flip it. But Ed already had a decent battlefield. He just needed to protect himself against something that Jeff was going to try to do. Yep. And this mono red deck, while it can generate a bunch of mana, it usually operates on fairly small margins and gets just enough mana to do whatever it needs to. And Daze was able to buy him the time and stop the Batterskull. Looking at their sideboards, Jeff has 2 Pyrostatic Pillar, 3 Trinisphere, 2 Pyromancy, 2 Sudden Shock, 2 Shattering Spree, a Boil, 2 Magus of the Moon, and a Pyroclasm. What do you think he's going to bring in?
So for the most part, I think Jeff's deck is pretty good against these Delver decks. So I think he's definitely going to be bringing in the Pyroclasm. Other than that, I could see the Trinispheres, but I think the Trinispheres might be a little too clunky.
Now on Ed's side, we have 4 Cabal Therapy, a Null Rod, a Pithy Needle, an Umazawa's Jite, 2 Pyroblast, 1 Ancient Grudge, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Gurmag Angler, and 1 Fire Covenant. What do we think he's going to bring in?
I think Ed is going to be bringing in the 4 Cabal Therapies, the Pything Needle naming Sneak Attack, and I think that's probably going to be about it. He could also consider Ancient Grudge now that he's seen Batterskull, but I don't think any of the other cards are going to be coming in.
Fair enough. Now, Jeff Hoogland, as you can see there, the number 1 next to his name, he is currently in first place for the Player of the Year leaderboard. And later on, coming up here in a handful of weeks, you can get even more points, just like Jeff Hoogland, playing in the SCG regionals. So regionals is coming up. You can find more information there. Go to starcitygames.com/regionals. There's going to be, I believe it's like 14-ish locations. We'll see that here in a slide coming up. But you can get this awesome playmat and an exclusive token.
Oh, not again.
This token is great.
Yeah, very cool.
Man, these events are real fun. They're quite competitive because there's quite a bit on the line. But
yeah,
you get
the points are really important.
You get a free playmat and token to the first 200 players. It's going to be August 6th, 2016. Lots of payouts here, $1,200 in prizes, along with 20 SCG points and an invitational qualification, and that goes down, as you can see there from the list. But that is a lot of SCG points, and you can only get those points in Opens, Classics, and at regionals and invitationals.
Yeah, and regional tournaments are also always great too, because you just get to know that how you rank against the other people in your area. I mean, it's so cool to say that, you know, I am the best person in my state and the nearby states as well.
Yeah, it looks like we've got 17 regional locations, including Calgary, Alberta, for those of you up in the Great White North. Make sure you go to go.starcitygames.com/regionals to get more details and to see this map to try and figure out the location where the local regionals is to you. Again, August 6th, 2016.
Star City Games makes it super easy. You can just put in your zip code and they'll tell you which one's closest.
All right, so Jeff's going to start off game one here with an Ancient Tomb, Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal, take 2 damage, play a Blood Moon. Jeff once again has Force of Will in his opening hand. He's going to counter the Blood Moon and start off with a Deathrite Shaman.
So one nice thing for Ed is he knows that since he's against a mono red sneak attack deck, he doesn't have to fear any counter magic out of Jeff's hand. So Ed can really pick and choose what he wants to Force of Will and know that whatever he Force of Wills is going to get countered. That said, Jeff is going to be able to just constantly jam things onto the board that are must counters over and over again, like that Blood Moon.
Ed's going to use a Scalding Tarn and fall down to 18 here. He's going to go get a copy of Volcanic Island. Let's see how he wants to play this turn. It's important to note that against these combo decks like Mono Red Sneak Attack, you have to build your board and present a clock, but also protect yourself against losing the game. Young Pyromancer is going to come down for Ed. Ed's going to eat his Scalding Tarn with his Deathrite Shaman and cast Ponder. We're going to get an Elemental token off of the Young Pyromancer. Still a little tilted that they don't have CVM tokens there. They have the Glandania tokens. But he earned his.
He did earn it, yep.
He earned it by winning his Invitational out in Seattle at the end of 2014. Ponder is going to keep it. He's going to draw a Wasteland and pass back to Jeff. Let's see if Jeff can do some fireworks here. Looks like he can cast a Batterskull if he wants. He's going to choose to wait a turn so that he can pay for a Daze if Ed happens to have one. That is a Crystal Vein. Those of you who are unaware of that card, it taps for colorless mana, and you can tap it and sacrifice it for 2 colorless mana.
Again, another nice way to ramp. Jeff's deck is very explosive, and having access to an extra mana for 1 turn is all that he needs to win.
Wasteland is going to take out the Ancient Tomb. Ed's going to swing with Young Pyromancer, an Elemental, and a Deathrite Shaman. Jeff's going to drop down to 14. Ed is going to cast a Cabal Therapy, get an Elemental. This is pretty good. He's going to be able to take whatever he needs by flashing that Cabal Therapy back after it's resolved.
Yeah, and the interaction between Young Pyromancer and Cabal Therapy is just so powerful, because you can, even if you miss with the first one, you can just cast it again and make a fresh token.
Yep, so Ed is going to miss with the first one. He's going to flash it back, replacing that Elemental, getting the Batterskull out of Jeff's hand. That Jeff could have cast last turn, but he chose to wait. Here comes a Simian Spirit Guide to try and hold down the fort.
And this will help hold Ed at bay, but Jeff is in a rough spot. Hard casting a Simian Spirit Guide is not why that card's in this deck.
Looks like Ed has a Stifle in his hand, so even if Jeff had cast that Batterskull, the living weapon trigger could have just been stifled.
Yeah, and this Deathrite Shaman gives Ed a lot of security against a Blood Moon. Now that we're at this state, it wouldn't be unreasonable for Ed to allow a Blood Moon to resolve just so that he could save a counterspell for something that was more threatening.
All right, Ed's going to land a second Young Pyromancer. Uses Deathrite Shaman to get a blue mana and cast another copy of Brainstorm, adding 2 elemental tokens to his battlefield. He's going to crash in with his 2 elementals and a Young Pyromancer. Jeff will block the Pyromancer with a Simian Spirit Guide, which is going to trade them off. But Jeff still has a very formidable board. Or Ed still has a very formidable board, and Jeff is needing something very quickly.
And Jeff only has one sweeper in his deck in the form of a sideboard Pyroclasm. It would certainly be a great draw if he could find it now. Another card that could be good is a Inferno Titan, although it doesn't happen very, very soon. It may just be too late.
All right, Ed's going to use his Pluto Delta on his upkeep and go find a copy of Underground Sea, falling to 17. That gives him a shuffle and a fresh card off the top. He will attack in for 6 damage with 4 elementals.
This is a 1-turn clock. Does Jeff have something to impact the
Pyromancer.
board, or does he have to concede here?
2, 3, 4. Jeff's going to play a sneak attack.
Oh, and he does have the Grizzlebrand in his hand that we saw from
Oh
before.
no, I wonder why he used a mountain instead of a Crystal Vein. I guess to play around a Spell Pierce. So he plays around a Spell Pierce and loses to the Stifle.
And that is the tricky thing that you need to do. Everything is a calculated decision. So frequently, you can't play around everything. You have to pick and choose what you play around. Jeff, unfortunately, made probably good calculation, but it just came out wrong here, and Ed Dimicco is our victor.
Yeah, Dimicco's going to pick up his win here with Grixis Delver over Jeff Hoogland. He's going to move on to 11-2 and put himself in a good spot to top 8 this event. Jeff is going to fall to 10-3. He is still alive, but he can't really afford to give up any more losses.